What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I just want to talk about a tweet from Andrew Yang. You know, we've been following a lot of Andrew Yang's stuff, and obviously, he's a very innovative guy supporting psilocybin mushrooms. We talked about that last week. He's trying to be aware of the best ways to advance society, and once again, we have a tweet. We should consider decriminalizing sex work on the part of the seller. It would be helpful in combating human trafficking. Many sex workers are themselves victims. So he supports what is known as the Nordic Model, which we're going to be talking about. Welcome in Kamala Harris supporters. Listen, it was a nice race. Yang and Harris have had some moments out there on the debate stage. You know, she's no longer here, but Yang is here and he is carrying the torch. And there are quite a few things that they actually had in common, but specifically, she endorses what is known as in-demand or Nordic model of prostitution law. This is a system in which sex workers themselves are decriminalized in some circumstances while their customers can still face arrest. You can't reduce Andrew Yang to a tweet, okay? And while we talked about Andrew Yang's performance in the last debate and how it was great, we got a lot of sound bites. You got to get that long form stuff because that's really where you're going to understand how all of his policies work together. Andrew Yang's goal, as stated here, is in demand. We got NordicModelNow.org. We're going to go to the official source. What is this Nordic model, right? Pioneered in Sweden after extensive research. One of the researchers was Cecilie Høigård. Here she describes what happened. We spent several years doing field work and developed those close relationships with women. We heard about their experiences of past abuse, extreme poverty, and violence. We're prepared for these stories because of our previous studies on outcast and marginalized people, but what the women told us of their concrete experience was unexpected and shocking. Let's just skip down to what is the aim of the Nordic model. Criminal legalization has the primary purpose of making it clear what we as a society consider unacceptable and discouraging people from doing these things. Now, we've talked about this quite a bit, and this is again why I like to focus on the way Andrew Yang thinks. There's going to be obviously things that a president is going to be aware of prior to the regular citizens. So if you don't know how he thinks, then you're going to end up in a situation where maybe he makes some decisions on your behalf that you don't agree with, and that's not what we want. We want you to be able to feel comfortable with Andrew Yang as your leader. That's what he's supposed to be. But Andrew Yang wants to obviously bring down the demand for trafficking itself and protect the obviously mostly women who are involved in this industry. Society's values do not change over time, and some things that used to be considered acceptable are now considered unacceptable and vice versa. For example, we used to think smoking was harmless, and so smoking in workplaces was not considered an issue. Then we learned about smoking. Even passive smoking is harmful, and the case was made that it is wrong for people to be exposed to passive smoking at work. Eventually, we changed the law to ban smoking in workplaces. He's not trying to encourage the behavior, but he's not going to lock the women up for it, especially those who are victims. Primarily what I want you guys to look at, and this is, I believe, from a worker herself, right? And this is the criticism. The most ill thought out policy by people who have never set foot in the industry themselves and soon will be the biggest contributor to violence against workers. The very thing this insane policy is supposed to stop. Lydia Corradona, a worker, I'm obviously bleeping words, worker and member of the UK-based worker advocacy and resistance movement, echoed Fury's comments. She claimed that the Norwegian government had acknowledged that the law had created a buyer's market. Added that if a law fails to reduce demand in the industry because it completely fails to address the reason that most of us are here in the first place, financial need. See, remember when I started this presentation, I said you can't look at Andrew Yang's individual tweets or individual statements. You have to look at the totality of what he's proposing here. Andrew Yang, again, if it's financial need, it's not financial need. You obviously want to create a demand. You want this to be a regulated, you want this to be a full business. He can't do that. He can't go all the way out there. He can't jump out the window with you. But what he can say is, I'll protect you as best as I can, all right? I will protect you from the violence, from being trafficked. I'll protect children. But her statement is that it fails to address the reason that they're in need in the first place, which is financial need. Well, Andrew Yang wants to give you $12,000 a year. Obviously, Andrew Yang talked about the UBI would be great for women who are in a situation where there's like domestic violence. He can only make a way. The point is this. Who else is talking about this? Who is the other guy out there? Is Joe Biden talking about this? Warren? You name them. Who are these other people who are speaking about this? We currently have criminalization. So let's go over to Juno Mack from her TED Talk. Let's see what she's got to say about it.
Regulation sounds great on paper, but politicians deliberately make regulation around the sex industry expensive and difficult to comply with. It creates a two-tiered system, legal and illegal work. We sometimes call it backdoor criminalization. Rich, well-connected brothel owners can comply with the regulations, but more marginalized people find those hoops impossible to jump through. And even if it's possible in principle, getting a license or proper venue takes time and costs money. It's not going to be an option for someone who's desperate and needs money tonight. They might be a refugee or fleeing domestic abuse.
People were polled on these things. People had to be polled about marijuana legalization for 20 years before we got to where we are today. When you find enough people who are able to say, listen, I want to purchase my ladies. When you find enough people to say that for some period of time, then we can get this thing passed. But can you get your dad to say it? Can you get your brother to say it? Can you get your cousin to say it? We have Mistress Matisse. She says, sex workers want our jobs decriminalized, not legalized. Why? Legalization means sex work stays a crime, but creates loopholes only for rich business owners, not workers. Decriminalization means removal of all criminal penalties from one-to-one exchange for sex for money. Here's what's going to happen, all right? Let me give you a crystal ball. You go full decriminalization. Price is going down. You don't know that you want this, but you want this. This is a step in the right direction. This is the best we're able to do. And again, if you don't think Andrew Yang is progressive enough in his position on the Nordic model, tell me who you think is doing a better job. I want to know. Please, tell me who is more progressive than Andrew Yang on the safety of sex workers, getting rid of the loophole or this whole this endless cycle of you're trapped in sex work because now you can't get a legitimate job because now you have a criminal record. Because you don't. And we're giving you money. So what's up? I'm sure there's some group out there right now in your local area who's like, hey, we got a petition, we're trying to get this thing on the ballot. We want you to sign up, we want you to go vote. Are you going to go vote for it? Because that's all you need for this to happen. Andrew Yang is clearly a rational person because he's the only one talking about this right now. He's the only one talking about psilocybin. He's the only one talking about decriminalizing opioids because he listens. The intention is to bring down the demand. So he can give you this. But if you can get public support to say, you know what, we want full legalization. He's clearly with you. And again, that's why this is all about how he thinks. Is he consistent with what he's saying? Is he pandering today? Is this something that we never expected Andrew Yang to ever say? No, because I just named you 3 different things that he's talked about decriminalizing. But we need public support. We need data. And if you can't get both of those things, this is still a radically big step in the right direction.